All right, Nick, let's talk about the Houston Texans. Some really good news in the media this week. I think the Texans got a real bright spot on their roster. Something they were kind of missing last season is maybe making its way back into the fold. I'm really excited to talk about this story today.
Yeah, Miles, I think this is actually probably the best news out of anything in the Houston organization this entire offseason. No hyperbole. This is really awesome that came out recently. But before we get into that news, Texans fans, we got an interesting question for you that we want you to answer in the comments section below. Look, in the past 2 decades or so that the Texans have been around, a lot of guys have obviously been at the quarterback position, a lot of kind of revolving door at times of who your franchise guy is going to be. We got a different question for you. Who is your favorite backup quarterback in Houston Texans history? We've asked this question of other fan bases, got some real interesting answers, and we want to hear this from you as well. Give us your favorite backup quarterback in Houston Texans history in the comment section below, and make sure you stick around to the end of today's video to hear a word from our partner of today's video, Neuro. All right, Miles, what you got? What's the latest out of Houston?
Yeah, Nick. So today's news is actually, I think it's going to affect the team positively for the Texans. It's going to be a big time upgrade in a position of need for them, but also it's a feel-good story as well because of the bad news the Texans received last year about John Metchie III. And I'm going to get into the article here, Nick. So Houston Texans wide receiver John Metchie III missed his entire rookie campaign in 2022 due to the diagnosis of leukemia. The news came amid Metchie's ongoing ACL rehab after he sustained the injury during the 2021 SEC Championship game. Nonetheless, according to head coach DeMeco Ryans, Metchie is on the right track to return this season. We'll see John get involved with our off-season program, Ryan said. With John, as with every other player, we're going to take it one day at a time and see where he can grow and where he can be when the time comes at the right time. When the season comes, we'll see where he is. So, Nick, this is huge news for the Texans, huge news for John Metchie. As always, like any good coach would do, DeMeco Ryans is kind of downplaying a little bit. He's not wanting to put too much pressure on Metchie. He's not wanting to put too many expectations out in the media. But the thing is that Metchie is back. He is going to be involved in the offseason program. He's going to be ramping up into OTAs, all that kind of stuff. And it's really nice to see a guy with Metchie's talent coming out of Alabama. He was an extremely dynamic player, looked to be very, very good. Think he can elevate any quarterback that lands in Houston this season, whoever it is through the draft that they decide to choose. So I think this is going to be huge for Houston. I think it's going to be huge for Metchie, and I'm glad to see he's back on the right track. What do you think about this move, Nick?
So let's start with on the field first. So Metchie is just a third down monster. Coming out of Alabama, didn't. I think he fell obviously out of the first round. But when I look at Metchie, he was the guy who was one of those classic, good at everything, but not great at anything particular, and didn't do amazing on his pro day. So he kind of fell in the draft, while other guys who ran great 40-yard dashes but weren't as good of football players were drafted ahead of him. I thought Metchie was an outstanding football player. Obviously had the injury concern, but if you remove that, the guy was insane in Alabama. Could do it all: route running, hands, big plays, catch and run, third down possession. Could do it all. Was absolutely fantastic playing for that Alabama offense, which could potentially be teaming up again with Bryce Young, maybe, or if it's CJ Stroud, either or. I think it's a good fit there. But I look at him as just an ultimate third down guy because the Texans right now, look, they've got their tight end in Dalton Schultz, brought him over from Dallas. Robert Woods, I think, is going to be their clear-cut number one, kind of a solid veteran guy. And then they got a bunch of okay guys to kind of fill out the holes. You look at a guy like Noah Brown's more of a blocker, maybe a few receptions here or there. But getting a guy like Metchie into the fold, a guy who can convert key third downs and be just another weapon for a young quarterback, would be huge on the field. Now, though, shifting to off the field, I think this is where the story really takes off. When you look at teams that kind of are looking to take that next leap and kind of rebuild, there's nothing seems to kickstart it faster than a guy that shows the toughness and fortitude to overcome some real adversity. Miles, it is my opinion that if you look at the current Chiefs dynasty, it started all the way back with Eric Berry overcoming a very similar situation that Metchie is overcoming here. He obviously had the diagnosis. He battled through that. He returns to the Chiefs, becomes the leader of that Chiefs team. And those Chiefs teams, people forget, for about 10 years ago, the Chiefs were terrible. They're going 2-14, 4-12. They were not a good football team. Eric Berry becomes the leader of that team, overcomes his obstacles, overcomes his medical issues, leads that team. They start going to playoff games. They start building some momentum, and then they're able to get Mahomes. And of course, the rest is history. But you can trace all the success of the Chiefs, in my opinion, all the way back to Eric Berry. And I think Metchie has a chance to have a similar kind of impact because once you have a guy in the locker room to be that kind of leader, the guy that can overcome that kind of adversity, it brings everybody else along. And so obviously on the field, Metchie is going to be a nice player for whoever ends up being the quarterback for the Texans. But I think in terms of the locker room, the culture, and and the energy behind this football team, he's going to be pivotal for them, just driving them forward as an organization.
Yeah, Nick, and Taylor is old as time. Like you said, people like to get around adversity. Another guy in the NFL right now, similar story, is a guy like James Conner. When he was in college, the same type of story. He was diagnosed with cancer, battled back onto the field. And when he got there, his whole team got around him. He's kind of just an inspirational story, how, he would train through his chemo, all kinds of stuff like that. So a really big storyline there. And I like to see Metchie get back on the field and be that dominant route runner that he was down in Alabama, and kind of just be a star for the Texans, be an emotional leader, be, just a captain of this team, showing people by example of battling through adversity and just showing how tough he is, both physically and mentally, because going through something like this as a top tier athlete, when you have something taken away from you, it is very tough mentally to come back from that as well. And if Metchie can, which I believe he is, battle that mentally, he's going to show that this Texans team is very resilient themselves. And I think we're going to see a big change from them this coming season.
All right, Miles, we would like to give a special thanks to our partner today's video, Neuro.
That's right, Nick. And I want you to go with me on a journey really fast. I want you to imagine this. It's 4th and goal in the big game, Nick. Your team is relying on you to make the big time game winning play. I know you've been in this situation before, Nick. The stadium is roaring. The clock is ticking. The game is on the line. But if only in that moment you were able to have some Neuro Gum. Neuro Gum will help you stay concentrated, and it gives you a burst of energy without a nasty crash.
That's right, Miles. Neuro has thoughtfully curated ingredients and does endless lab testing, which means that you can reach the right state of mind safely and consistently. That's the most important part. It gives you a clean burst of energy and focus without the jitters of coffee or any of those other energy drinks.
That's right, Nick. And if you click our sponsor link in the description below, you can enjoy energy, calm, and focus whenever you need it.